Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
Star Trek Podcast.
We all want to think our future is important, and ours, yours and mine. It is. Just not the way you think. Time is, it's complicated. But the monk showed me something simple. Every time we change the path, he dies. And he's got things to do. Fate of the galaxy type things. Paths diverge. But I am the result of one that should never have been taken. Thank you. Hey, look at it this way. How many people get to give their life for someone twice in one day? See, twice, because there's two of us and we're both... I got it. Got it.
That'll make it so funny because it's inside baseball. People
No,
love
it can't
that.
be too inside. People don't like it if it's too inside. All right.
Inside your face.
Okay. We're starting now.
I'm inside.
We're starting after much
Inside
effort.
podcast.
We're starting this podcast. The It's Got Star Trek podcast. That's the podcast you're listening to. Welcome to it.
Yep.
It is episode 140
Sir Nasalot.
of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. And on this episode, we have the delightful honor and privilege to discuss the season 1 finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Does anybody know the name of the episode?
Balance of Terror. No, wait.
Wait a second. What did you do?
Yeah.
You want me to give up, Jesse?
No, I didn't. I purposely did not learn the name.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm not about. That's not what I'm about, man. So.
No. I mean, I thought maybe you had it written down, but that's good that I do.
I stopped writing it down.
Dan, you know,
Okay.
Jesse is a member of the cult of willful ignorance. The willful being the
Completely willful.
the key component there.
Voluntarily.
All right.
So it was called Quality of Mercy.
A quality of mercy. You need the article. A quality of mercy.
You're making a big deal over one letter.
I like to be accurate when we're coming to titles because otherwise we get a series of emails, of aggressive emails, explaining that we got something ever so slightly wrong. Sometimes they're entertaining to read, but not when they are correct.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you were like, no, it's crazy. We got to make a big deal out of the fact that you forgot to say
Yes.
You could have just said you could have just said Dan, it's actually a quality of mercy.
Yes.
But no big deal.
And I accomplished my goal. You are correct in how you are describing my motivations, and I was successfully got exactly what I wanted. I made a big deal about it. What I won't make a big deal about is the quality of Dan's audio feed because yet again, Dan is joining us via Zoom. So please forgive any digital goobles and garbles that may sneak their way through. Dan got it back. Now he. Yeah. Okay, yes. Okay, Dan. Yes.
What's going on here?
You're a modern day Stan Laurel, Dan. Yeah. You got a case of the Cardassian flu or something.
Oh man.
So
Space disease.
Anyway, Dan's on Zoom. So that's just to lay out the groundwork for what's going on this evening. A Quality of Mercy, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, season 1 finale. And I think there's a lot of topics to discuss. We'll try to discuss them in some semblance of order. But yes, as Jesse referred to, this is a revisiting of the story that happens in Star Trek TOS's season 1 episode, Balance of Terror. Not a Balance of Terror, just regular old Balance of Taylor.
So this is
Maybe
like
that's how I got it mixed up.
This is like a different timeline of
yes.
if
Maybe I was
balance
actually
of
more
Taylor
in the title.
Yeah. So the balance of terror, we will of course need to discuss.
Time crystals.
Yes, time crystal plot. We'll need to talk about New Kirk, Old Pike. What are we going to do about Una?
New Kirk and Old Pike.
Some vibes about the story in general.
General vibes.
So, we like to put these things out at the beginning and not require the audience to spend too much time sort of cobbling together what our opinions may be. I very much enjoyed this season finale.
Yeah.
I really liked the overall story. I thought it closed down the season nicely. Left us a little mini cliffhanger for going into next year.
It was clever, man.
Good use of Easter eggs and all that stuff. Plenty of things to discuss and point out along the way. But I don't know. I thought it was great. Jesse, you thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Dan, what were your thoughts this week on this?
Concurrence.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable episode.
Yeah.
Certainly was an enjoyable episode.
I thought it was really, really well put together. Why don't we start with this whole balance of terror business? Because not all the people listening may be familiar with how closely this connects to balance of terror. I went ahead and watched it again this afternoon to remind myself, and was really surprised by how the plot is the same plot as in Balance of Terror, with the minor deviations caused by the fact that it's a different setup. Pike is involved.
A lot of the
Kirk.
lines are in both episodes
verbatim.
Yeah.
Lots of lines verbatim. The whole business with
Just say
Outpost
them
4, the comet business.
It was the same dude, Hansen.
Yes.
Except in this one, like his hair got burnt off or something. He was completely bald.
There was a whole discussion on Reddit about this doesn't look like the same guy. They can't even bother to make him look like the same guy.
Well, it was worse this time.
They do a bunch of reversey stuff in this episode too. I guess that's part of the core message. It's a predictable message. We know what the message of the episode is going to be from the beginning, and for me, that's part of what impresses me about how much I enjoyed this episode. Is we know exactly the resolution to the plot. Old Pike is coming to say, you can't change your future.
Nah.
You can, but it's not necessarily good.
It's gonna fuck everything up.
You might fuck everything up a little bit.
You're gonna kill off Spock.
But the mirroring of Pike avoiding his fate and merely transferring it onto somebody else. They do the same thing with the couple that's getting married, Tomlinson and Martine, I think was Robert Tomlinson and Angela Martine. We don't get their names in this episode, which, by the way, I'm guessing
I think you get them in TOS.
You get them in TOS, and I'm guessing we don't hear their names in this episode because maybe they'd have to pay the estate of the writer or something. I know sometimes there's like that weird Hollywood business stuff, right? Where that happens. But regardless, in TOS, we know the characters are Robert Tomlinson and Angela Martine. And in the TOS episode, Tomlinson dies, the fella, but in this episode it's reversed. So it's another sort of reinforcing that idea of you might change your fate, but you might just, shift the balance of where fates were going to fall otherwise.
Yeah, but as far as messages go, so Pike was trying to take the conversational route, the more diplomatic, like understanding sort of Starfleet. We have to open our minds to everyone kind of route, but then it bit him in the ass in the end. So I don't know what that exactly they're trying to say with that, or if they were just simply trying to come up with a scenario that was an alternative to what we already had that caused problems. Because like I said, the end result is the scenario that caused problems was the diplomatic sort of solution.
Yes.
So that's kind of like you got saying us, we got to be careful. I don't know. I don't know if that really agrees or disagrees with Star Trek philosophy or not.
Well, I think
they're allowed to change.
Yeah, no, but I think you can also look at it from a few different perspectives, right? Because I agree with you that yes, Pike is at the highest level. He's trying to pursue a diplomatic solution, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, it's not even that Kirk is suggesting just being like hilariously aggressive, blah 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 blah. He's being clever about it. Like all his plans are clever, and they're sort of like that in TOS. Now they're aggressive. They are aggressive / clever, but it's not like blindly going in guns blazing. He's still about coming up with plans and thinking about it. And so the message I was taking away from this was, in that particular scenario, you needed the person who was going to be aggressive and be clever about it, as opposed to just getting themselves and their ship blown up by barreling in without thinking about it, right?
In Balance of Terror, like Kirk is kicking those dudes' ass for like most of the episode.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you see that episode recently, Jesse?
I watched it today, and then I
should have watched
the
it.
episode. I watched the Strange New Worlds episode again, and
I did the same thing.
And
It was a little sandwich,
happening.
a little Star Trek sandwich.
That's a lot of Star Trek.
Well, Balance of Terror is also, and justifiably so, considered one of the classic episodes of the original series.
It's cool to see Pike and Kirk together, in the sense that in this show, we've been getting them to know Pike a lot more, right? You know, obviously Pike is the good guy. He's like, we always root for Pike. Usually when our captain, I'm going to call him our captain because
Yes.
it's the one who we
The
love
protagonist
on the show,
of the show.
Yeah. Usually, like, if they're up against some crusty old admiral or something, you're like, oh, that admiral. Oh, I hope Captain Picard gets that admiral. You know,
Or like
but
Captain Jellicoe when he replaces Picard and everyone hates him, even though like
Jellicoe.
there are a lot of people who argue when you look at the episode with Jellicoe, he's just making very normal points. Like Counselor Choi, maybe you ought to be wearing a uniform like everyone else. Right?
Right. So this was nice, intriguing, interesting, whatever. Let's use a word somewhere.
We
to
can
mean
use a
something.
What word
number
are
of
you gonna
words.
use,
We got
Yeah,
a lot of content we got to pull together here every week. So please use as many words as you like.
Okay. Cool. I'm glad we're not rushed on time. I can just keep using words. So we're rooting
use
for
your
Pike.
words though,
So I'm using my I statements. I'm rooting for Pike because Pike is cool. and
because he's
like
the hero. Yeah.
He's our
He's
captain.
the hero.
But like
Am
I
I
said,
right? The hero, right? Because
That's,
Pike has hair. That's something people talk about, right?
So
Yeah.
Pike. So like I said, Pike's not going against a jerk captain or something like that. He's going against Kirk. So it's
Well,
the way we think of it.
he's kind of the jerk captain in this case, from at least
Yeah.
from Pike's point of view.
Well, and also Pike makes
I think
Pike makes
Pike
people
is
think
also-
of a pike, you know, the weapon, the pike that's all phallic and long, whereas Kirk makes you think of when people are all kirked out.
Yeah.
No,
Like, you
what
get
I'm saying,
kirked.
I'm not saying that. I don't know. I was just saying that Pike and Kirk, it's hard to know who to root for, and it's cool to see that they get to go head to head like that, because they do sort of they do differ in opinion and sort of squabble at each other a little bit. And it wasn't easy to pick a side and Pike actually did come off as looking kind of like, I don't want to say weaker, but like, I don't know. I was basically kept trying to look through Kirk's point of view just because I knew Kirk better, and the captain is Pike. And so they go together, and then it's like they do the thing and you don't know who to root for. That's what I was just saying.
And this is like a different Kirk. I mean, he's not the Kirk we normally see.
Well, and partly because the timeline has changed.
Because,
so
yeah,
his experiences,
exactly,
at
right.
least to some extent, even if it's not a particularly long extent, have been different, right? He's just had a different set
But he's
of
the younger up and coming dude.
younger up and coming, genius,
Yeah,
nerd,
right.
all that sort of thing.
He probably got promoted real fast.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of having them be able to be in a position of sort of competition to some degree, but not in a way that undermined Pike, or at least not particularly strongly, I don't think. Like, Pike didn't come across as a
This
complete...
guy
like-
seems a little lankier. This is a lankier Kirk.
well, we'll talk about the Kirk guy in a second, because I think there's a lot to talk about him.
I know, yeah.
But
There's a lot to talk about.
But in this whole like Balance of Terror, you know, Pike, Kirk, the Romulan commander thing, it was really nice how they put that all together. I do agree with you, Dan, though, that the message is maybe a little bit confusing. Balance of Terror was sort of an anti-war episode, right? I mean, it's really kind of talking about the futility of war and how the older, more experienced folks are tired of it. Whereas a lot of the younger folks are all about like, no, let's go to war.
This distorts that a bit.
Yeah, this doesn't have that message. It's a totally different plot, right? It's piggybacking on the plot of Balance of Terror. But this is really a different message that I guess is closer to along the lines of, you know, you can't save everyone, you know, something along those lines, right? I have to sort of peel that out of the episode a little bit, but I guess fundamentally it comes down to, I guess you could say, you can't change your fate. It's not saying that. It's saying you can change your fate, but maybe you shouldn't. And when you accept that, then the bottom part of the story is, yeah, some people are going to die. Like 2 of these cadets, this kid that you just met in the teaser, in the opening sequence of this episode, that kid is going to die horribly. And you can't do anything about it, because if you do, it's just going to fuck up a whole bunch of other stuff.
Because you need Spock to make peace with the Romulans.
The good of the many outweighs
another century or so.
The good of the one.
I think what they should have done, Pike should have done, is allowed himself to live, and then like said button 3 times and spun around once and see if that changed the future enough. It didn't. Tell old Pike he can go back around, say daba daba daba, and then do a front flip, and maybe that'll change the future. I'm just like the butterfly effect, you know.
Just experiment around.
All he has to do is do a different little dance after he prevents himself from dying until he makes the right decision, or isn't present at all in that situation.
The thing is,
and then the future is good for everyone, and Pike gets to live, and everyone, and Mott gets to live.
I'm very confused by what you're saying.
No, I understand Dan's wavelength. It does have to be translated through a few prisms and radio dials and things like that, but. What Dan is describing is the sort of thing that they would investigate on, say, Rick and Morty, right? Where you'd end up having a room full of various versions of Pike, and they're all like arguing with each other, and then they finally, in the end, they figure out, they're like, all right, this is the way to go. Yes.
Yeah, so they just so it doesn't take
Captain
much
Pike,
to change.
look at me.
It doesn't take much to change the future.
Well, the very important point, before we proceed in this,
or unless time is like a river, and when we make changes, it is merely but throwing a pebble into that river, and the river keeps going basically in the same
diverting
direction.
it.
So it's
Did you say stop ruining it?
Diverting.
The
Diverting.
philosophical and metaphorical point that you were making, or topic that you're bringing up, is very interesting.
Totally, though.
But
it's super interesting.
But
because I'm super interested.
In my view,
you are.
I do think the point. Maybe not the point, but an important point for an episode like this, and this is frequently true in Star Trek, is that the time travel is irrelevant. It is a plot device. In this case, it is Klingon time crystals. So the point being that when people get hung up, and I'm not against being hung, I enjoy having those philosophical discussions about this, that, if, that, then how does it work? But it's never consistent in Star Trek because generally speaking, the time travel is not really for the plot. It is just a mere device to set up the plot. So in this case, Pike gets to see what it is this is reverse It's a Wonderful Life. Instead of you should not kill yourself because otherwise everyone's life goes shitty, it should be like, hey, dude, you kind of got to get fucked up a bit. Otherwise, everyone else does.
Yeah, that's a dark message, too. Basically saying, like, you're better off dead.
Well, he could still avoid the reactor explosion and not be the captain of the Enterprise during the balance of terror.
He should have just resigned. And then he would.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
But
I know that's not the point you're making. I understand that's not the point you're making.
No. It's always difficult for me to verbalize precisely what I mean here, but because it is tricky, it's sort of similar to the whole canon debate or whatever. Yeah. It's that it's not that it's problematic to discuss these things and these what ifs and buts and therefores, therefore there go there ergo there are
will have been
will have
maybe
into the
who knows
I have thus thrust.
Weird.
It is yes. It's just that what the writers have intended, what the producers have intended, is we're doing this for the sake of doing some character work here. We're doing character development through an interesting story. The same thing is true of like the Kingdom of Elysian, for example, right? I mean, it's absurd, right? It's absurd, but you accept it in order to enjoy the plot to whatever degree you may enjoy.
I think people tend to get a lot more hung up on time travel, although more people are kind of accepted that time travel is always ridiculous in any scenario it's presented.
And I would narrow that point by saying, depending on the context and in the Star Trek context, the broader Star Trek context, in most cases, the time travel or whatever similar sci-fi thing is a plot device in order to tell some interesting tale. And Star Trek does not make really any attempts to be consistent between
So-
the different versions
right,
of it. If you're trying to tell
right.
some hard sci-fi where like the mechanics have to be specific, then yeah, it's going to be more annoying if they're inconsistent about that.
Yeah, with the time crystal thing. So basically, I was trying to figure out how that worked. He touches the time crystal, and does he just see a vision of his future with him playing the role of himself, or does he actually jump to some weird other dimensional future? Like, it's weird. He
This
jumps
is a
to the
different
future.
time crystal. Yeah.
He jumps to the future, but he's playing himself. So is it just a vision he's having, or is it? Or is
I don't
it
know.
It's like quantum leap.
Yeah.
He does
There's
say
some-
he does say that he experiences everything, right?
It is like
He said that
quantum-
in a previous
He quantum
episode.
leap. He quantum leapt into himself. That's fucking weird.
Now, did he actually live in that timeline or not? That's a totally different
In some
question.
dimension.
If I had to guess, I would say he's just living in some in some like recording of the timeline, some hollow recording that's embedded within the crystal. I don't think the crystal's transporting his conscious into the actual future.
Right.
Because
So
then you
it's
have
just
the future him is also coming back to talk to
So-
the past him. Or
Yes,
the
that
present-
too.
The present
so
him.
the Chris.
No,
time
that's a good
crystals-
point. So maybe they are
Yeah.
sending people around. I don't know. See, it's inconsistent, and I
crystal-
couldn't care less.
Yeah, no, it's
wait,
about,
the time
about Pike.
crystal. The time crystal is like a crystal ball or a seeing stone, basically, where you see into the future. But you also have the added bonus of role playing yourself as well.
Yeah.
in the
But as
future.
Jesse noted, they do send old Pike seemingly back into time, or at least into
Yeah.
Pike's mind
Oh,
back in
right.
time.
And he's got
No,
those,
but they said a separate
those later
Pike. That was a
one of those
separate-
later uniforms on.
No. When they said Pike back in time, that was a separate Pike. But when Pike Prime went forward, he jumped into old
But
Pike in
but
the
old
future.
Pike is present at least in Pike's mind in the past.
But that's even older.
I
Pike.
know.
I know it's a separate Pike. I'm just saying that the difference between, because like we don't see Pike seeing himself walk around in the 2266, right? We see Pike
Right.
inhabiting that person, whereas old Pike
Right.
and new Pike are together.
Right.
Right,
Right, exactly.
So they can do both, is what I'm saying. And I didn't even notice it because I was like, yeah, okay, whatever.
So
Yeah.
so if future Pike goes
Star
back
Trek.
in time, there's two of
You've
them.
been Star Trek.
And if there's two of them in old time, that implies to me that he went back to the future, back in the past,
Marty.
back to the future. When old Pike went back in time,
Marty,
it was a
you made
tradition.
it.
When old Pike went back in time, it was a traditional time travel, like in Back to the Future or any other, or Time Cop or whatever, where you just a second copy of you goes back in time. That was traditional.
Whatever,
But when
man.
Pike went to the future and inhabited himself, that was like some weird vision he was having.
Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. Because it's a time crystal.
Time.
So
Anyway,
it's-
time crystals-
something weird is going on.
I was reading about time crystals, and there's some kind of weird thing where the atoms like form themselves over the fourth dimension or some weird shit
Time
like
crystals
that.
are an
Yeah,
actual
man.
thing that
Yeah, right.
Google people are working on.
But
and stuff.
but they're fucking confusing.
Apparently that's something a lot of people have discussed. I think even on the staff, when they were like, some writers like, oh, we're Klingon time crystals, and someone's like, don't call them time crystals, that's stupid. And they're like, no, it's like, here's the research
No,
paper.
it
on
sounds
them. It's
awesome,
like,
dude.
That's what these scientists actually call them. They also call quarks like up quarks
Quark.
and down quarks and strange and
Quark.
That's what I was saying. I was looking up. Because I knew time crystals were real, so I was reading about them, and they're weird. They don't sound very similar though to the Star Trek's time crystals.
Yeah,
they sound like
that's true.
two totally different things.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes, Dan. Yes. I agree
Yes.
with you. Yes.
No, I mean, I just don't want you to think that I think that they're not.
Understood. Thoroughly
What are you-
understood.
What are you condescending me for?
I'm not condescending. I
He's
am
trying
not-
to get on with the podcast.
I am trying to move along home. We need to take a break in a second. However, I did want to just go through a couple of the other similarities with Balance of Terror
Oh, yeah.
before we go to break. Kirk strokes the top of the console the same way Pike does. Like he's like walking around, like but when they're when they're first encountering the whole Romulan business, like before all this shit goes down, Kirk is all like stroking it. Pike does exactly the same thing. They have Spock looking into his scanner, and of course we've seen Spock look into a scanner a bunch of times, but this time I think to me it stood out like it was something they hadn't really focused on before, where the digital readouts all reflected on Spock's eyeballs, like on his face, and it just looks very similar to a shot in Balance of Terror where Spock is doing the same thing around the same moment in the plot. Another thing is in Balance of Terror and in this episode, both versions of Kirk are frequently lit with a black vignette, sort of like a matte vignette around, like where it's like a shadow on the film, like up and down, just a very, very similar way to frame and look at them.
In Balance of Terror, he had this like bright patch on like the top of his head.
Yeah, they didn't quite go that far in this episode, in the Strange New Worlds episode.
Yeah.
But
There
they
was
had hints of
something
that.
going on,
They had
yeah.
hints of that. There were a lot of shots, too many to note, but it's cool when you watch both episodes close together, where there is very similar framing and similar camera movements. One of the key ones is when they see the Romulan signal for the first time in both episodes. They see the bridge of the Romulan ship and they see that the Romulans look like Vulcans. And then the camera starts from all far away from Spock and zooms in. And then,
that was a really weird
and
zoom.
then his eyebrow goes up. Well, because they mimicked the exact thing from TOS.
That's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. They were mimicking something else. Right.
And even Ethan Peck putting his eyebrow up, just like Leonard Nimoy did in Balance of Terror. It was
Leonard
fantastic.
Nimoy.
Yes.
That was the one I noticed like first that I remembered before rewatching Balance of Terror. I rememred that bit when I watched the episode for the first time. And like, if
just
that
like
sentence makes sense for what I just said.
just like it was neat that I felt that the two, our hero Captain and famous Captain Kirk go like head to head in a ways, but work together ultimately.
The
It was
famous
also
Captain Kirk. This is the
it was
not
also
famous Captain
it was also neat how like they put this emphasis on Spock as this sort of it shows the transition it shows the beginning of the transition of Spock and Spock getting to know Kirk, and it's sort of bridging that gap. With Spock is bridging that gap in that situation, and that comes through in the episode too. So
yeah, I agree. And then some other thing. Well, the Romulan commander being undermined by sort of a war-hungry junior officer, that occurs slightly differently, but in both episodes. So that was another thing to compare. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to compare between the episodes. So definitely highly recommend watching Balance of Terror. And I think we're probably are we gonna discuss that next week? Did we decide yet? I think
Maybe
we should.
Yeah, we'll
There's music in this episode that is reminiscent of some of the
it's
music
straight out of that.
do.
Yeah, the Romulan, that's the Romulan theme that was from
word.
Balance of Terror, and it comes up elsewhere in TOS and TNG, etc. But that's like a straight up TOS musical sting. The Romulan,
real, man.
Romulan, and it's at some points it's like super loud. It's great.
Yeah.
do you think I thought we were talking about it next week. Do we need to? It seems like
No, let's talk about it. Why not? It's a good excuse. Good excuse to watch the movie, watch the show. It's good. It's a very good episode.
Again.
I just feel like you guys rewatched it and I
watched
didn't.
it 5
so
times.
I didn't know.
I'm gonna watch it 5 fucking times.
Yeah, we'll watch it 10 times between now.
10,
Fine.
11 times.
All right, and
pew, pew.
speaking of doing things 10
11,
times,
12,
let's take a brief break.
Okay.
10 times.
And when we get back,
I'm gonna take a break 10 times.
when we get back, let's talk about this new Kirk fella. All right, we'll be right back.
No.
Alrighty, we're back. We're back.
Alrighty then.
Back from the break.
From the
I
break.
just segued into New Kirk. Do you know how I segued into New Kirk?
He said, "Alrighty
then."
Yeah, you made a Jim Carrey face because he looks like Jim Carrey.
Yeah. I wasn't like the only person who thought that. Apparently, I was looking on the internet, and other people were making that connection.
Did you say
I thought there was a cross of
Did you say other people or elder people?
other people, maybe elder people, but I don't know if they use the internet.
The internet.
Were they Utes?
I was saying he kind of looks like cross between Jim Carrey and Rob Lowe to me in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that. I hadn't considered that, and I don't know that I will. But
Well, you're missing out.
if I have some free time later this weekend, I will consider that. I will consider the Jim Carrey Rob Lowe. I'm satisfied with just Jim Carrey. He really looks like he's about to, like you said, Dan. Like, alrighty then.
Yeah.
I'm Fire Marshal Bill.
Let me tell you something.
He seems familiar, like I may have seen him in something else.
He was on some sort of
He's
vampire
been
show or
around,
something. I haven't seen him before.
Jim Carrey. He was in a
no,
Jim
Kirk
he was
fella.
in like a
God
made-for-TV movie where he played an alcoholic back
Oh
in
yeah,
the
that was
early
yeah,
90s.
I know the one you're talking about. That's a good one.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He was like an after-school special type.
I didn't watch
TV
those.
movie. Yeah. Well, it's because we were busy after school.
I was
doing all-
watching He-Man after school.
We were doing all sorts of cool stuff, like playing Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah, then I was doing stuff after school.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog. Or some of us were running BBSs,
I wasn't doing that.
bulletin board systems.
I was writing mods making tracker files using Fast Tracker 2 for a while, Stream Tracker.
This motherfucker was writing mods left and right.
I was
You
playing
couldn't
Star
believe
Fox.
it. You couldn't believe it. I was playing Trade Wars on my
I was into
DBS.
Tracking software.
Yes, mod tracking, which is a form
word. I
of
know
musical construction. That's the correct
I'm
term,
hip for
right?
that.
You construct music.
Yeah,
Music
you basically. It's
Composition.
fucking. There's so much minutia you can get into with numbers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like I'm gonna make A65 makes it go. It's like I don't know. Sure.
Yeah. Not what you guys are.
I gotta get into that.
All right, new Kirk. I'm a little bit ambivalent at this stage. I enjoyed the episode. I thought the actor did a good job for the character, etc. It's
interesting.
It's hard for me to judge. It doesn't come off very Kirk-like to me. It seems to be lacking some of that
we're
charm.
We're used to a certain delivery from William Shatner, and I mean, nobody's going to just do some kind of William Shatner impression because that would be lame.
Yeah,
Like,
Chris Pine though in the movies has a little bit more of that quirky charm because Kirk is a little bit weird.
You need a quirky charm, that's
he's
true.
sort of like confident, a little quirky.
This guy's quirky in some kind of way.
Yeah,
but
I guess there's no way to know. But do you think they?
Weird.
Do you think they considered trying to get Chris Pine on it?
No, he's a movie star.
Yeah, but like, do you think they thought about it? Do you think they would have done it if he said yes?
His agent wouldn't let him do that because they couldn't afford
Star
him.
Trek,
He would be getting paid millions of dollars per episode. It's the unfortunate thing about how the economics of Hollywood works is it can be.
Look, I never said it was like
very difficult. Would they want him? I don't know. I'm sure. I think they prefer doing their own thing. They didn't get Bruce Greenwood to play Pike. He played Pike in those movies.
Oh snap!
And he's a very good actor, but I think obviously they've got their little TV universe going. It'd be interesting to think about Chris Pine doing it, but I just a few things puzzled me a little bit about this new Kirk, including I don't know why his hair was so dark, and I'm not
that was different.
I normally don't complain about those things,
and his brother's hair is dark too.
Yeah, and his brother's fine because it's his brother. He's a
goofball.
He has the stupid mustache. I mean, they went out of their way. They'd be like, what do we know about Sam Kirk? He has a stupid mustache,
right.
And so they gave him a stupid mustache. Right, that's cool. But this Kirk is a little Jim Carrey-ish. The hair is very dark for some reason, and his mannerisms they're not bad. They're Kirk-ish.
I think he seems like a taller dude.
Just lacking a little bit. He's definitely taller, skinnier. Yeah. Now Kirk is supposed to be that obnoxious combination of super nerdy, but also all like athletic and sexy.
Right.
Everyone always gets aggravated when you encounter people like that. I think it's great. I think it's great that people like that exist.
That's cool.
But I understand socially why that can be somewhat annoying. Where it's like
I'm not like that.
It's like, oh, you're all like sexy and athletic. Oh, and you're a complete nerd and you're reading history books and stuff all the time. Anyway, he does. I think this actor does get that across. Perhaps even better than Shatner, certainly better than Pine. The idea that this person is Captain Kirk is highly knowledgeable. He studies a lot, right? He's not some braggadocious, aggressive, whatever guy. He's aggressive in the sense that he wants to take the initiative, but not in a foolhardy way,
right? In a tricky way,
right? Yeah. There's like, as I was saying before, there's some degree of cleverness is almost required for him to take action. I think he's bored if there isn't some clever little twist that he can use in order to accomplish his mission.
You see that he's definitely he's just a different style captain than Pike is.
Yeah,
that's just how it is. He's just a different guy, and so maybe he's the right guy for certain situations, and Pike's the right guy for other situations.
And that's why I was saying it was cool they went up against each other, because see they're from different positions, but
that's why
you have a personal connection to both, so it's not so easy to pick like which side is the cooler side.
Pike's proved better, man.
Pike's did get them all in deep shit, got billions of people killed or whatever.
He started a war with the Romulans.
But like I was thinking, like Kirk looking at Pike going up there, and Kirk being like, "Who is this?"
It's so cool. Michael Burnham started a war with the Klingons. Michael Burnham's still cool.
Huh?
Michael Burnham started that whole Klingon thing. So
she didn't really start it. Everyone blames her for it, but she didn't really do it.
Wait, why are we
But
talking
she-
about the Klingons?
As
He's
an,
talking about
as an
Michael
example,
Burnham. He's saying other people can
Pike is
fuck
still
up and still be
awesome,
cool.
even though like he fucked up in a deviated timeline.
Yeah, the timeline had a deviated
Michael
septum.
Burnham fucked up, and she's still cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
That's
Yeah.
that.
Well,
that
no,
was
I
my
know he's still
point.
cool.
It was a
Okay.
that was
No,
all,
it's-
all I was
it's
saying.
good. It was a good point.
I was not trying to. I was not trying to confuse you with.
It was a good.
It was a good point. It's a good point.
It was a super.
They both had their captaining styles. Both had their
Are you
pros and
waving
cons.
a pen around at me? What is that?
They both have their pros and cons.
Yes,
God.
he's furiously gesticulating.
Looks
with
like
a-
it's about to fly out of your hand.
with a pen.
It's like your face is about to fly into my mouth.
That's called a French kiss, Dan.
Oh.
Oh.
I what again though with the we talked about how that you get to compare their styles a little bit without at least too much undermining one or the other.
Right.
And in this case, it was Kirk coming up with the idea of using all those remote drones to mimic
That was cool.
a Starfleet armada. Which was cool. That was I thought that was a cool plan,
That was good.
and in addition to that, he also
That was good Starfleet.
but did that awesome battle at the end, which of course was amazing to watch with all the ships blocking
So-
the Romulan weapons as the Enterprise is trying to
Yes.
fix itself and escape.
Right. So it didn't work as a bluff, but it worked as a way to shield the Enterprise as it was getting away.
I think it worked as a bluff. I think
Yeah.
they were about to destroy the Enterprise, and when those ships showed up, then the Romulan fleet was like, "All right, fuck you." We're going to go to war with everybody. They did still attack them, of course, but I mean, yeah, I guess in a strict sense, the bluff didn't work beyond 2 minutes or something like that.
But it gave him a couple minutes to get away. Right. I think when Kirk was all like, "You flinched," and then Pike goes, "Don't question my battle readiness" or whatever. That was pretty cool. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. Like Pike was losing. Pike had to be like, "Hey man, don't do that, man."
Pike was getting angry in this episode.
Yeah, he
Like,
yelled at
you know, he
Ortega's.
Yeah.
And everyone was like,
Or
"Jesus
Ortega's-
fucking Christ, Daddy yelled at us."
Yeah, I know. It was
Stand down.
it was pretty scary because right. He says that, and then he just like shaking his head like, "Man."
Yeah.
And
Motherfucker.
that was pretty powerful. Ortega's, I didn't quite.
Ortega's was
we're-
filling shit. What she was doing is she was filling the.
She was being
the-
Styles.
She was being Styles, and they didn't make her full on Styles. And as a reminder,
Yeah,
Dan,
but-
and to the
but-
others
but
in the
in-
audience, Styles was in the balance of terror. He's
Yeah.
he's like racist against Vulcans, and he's being like
Yeah, but
openly
so-
racist.
Yeah.
But it still has to relate to Strange New Worlds, and it was weird that Ortega's turned totally from this, joke making
The pointy-haired
super
elephant in the
pilot.
room. She said the pointy-haired elephant. In the
Wait,
room.
Yeah, she said some like racist
That was
shit.
Well,
messed up,
what they were
man.
doing, they weren't making her full on racist like Styles, but they were.
No,
But the other point, Styles' racism was combined with his desire to get revenge on the Romulans, right?
I see
he
that.
was, and I think I can buy into Ortega's, and it's a 7 years in the future Ortega's too, by the way.
right.
I think
And
they- I
all
could've-
about, like,
perhaps
let's fuck some people
a dark
up.
future. Yeah.
I think they could have dropped like maybe one or two expository lines, sort
Yeah.
of talking about why she's suddenly like this, because it is. I will buy
And she
that
was
she
all
can
like,
become
"It's
like.
the Romulans."
I can buy that she can become like this, but I didn't. There was no connecting glue or whatever
I
fabric.
guess you have to
or- I don't
rely
know.
on the idea that some outposts have already been completely destroyed from her perspective, which is also the perspective of Styles and Spock and others.
Yeah, but
is
it still
that,
felt like
that warrants an aggressive response.
Yeah, it still felt a little weird it just felt like a big turn for Ortega's.
Yeah,
in
might have been a
that sense.
little much.
But it kind of
She
reminded
usually
me a
just
little
drives
bit.
the ship. She's not the one that shoots the guns.
It kind of reminded me of when Lon was freaking out about the Gorn when she was like, "They're monsters," and
Yeah.
actually that was Ortega's in that scene talking about how are we going to get them, or has anyone
Yeah.
seen them, or whatever. And she's like, "I've seen them. They're monsters." So she was kind of like doing that whole thing.
Lon
but,
was on a different ship.
Yeah, this
What?
time he
That's-
was referring
that's-
to the previous episode.
Yeah.
Or not
yeah,
the
that's
previous,
that.
the one with
I
the
was just
Gorn.
making a comparison, and Lon was.
Yeah,
How Ortega's was acting like
I was
Lon.
making an unnecessary comment.
Yeah,
Oh no, that's
classic Jesse.
Classic.
everyone's unnecessary in the end.
I mean,
Nothing matters.
this whole business is a bunch of nonsense. This whole having a podcast, and
Yeah,
watching
it's pretty silly.
TV shows.
Nobody's listening.
Yeah, TV shows. There's like- well, we do get. Last time I checked,
No,
we had
they're listening.
like 100 billion downloads.
100 bazillion.
I think I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man.
it sounds about right.
Yeah, maybe we should start having ads.
Yeah,
Maybe give or take
You
a
can sell
billion.
some shit, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Capitalism.
Normally, I would like to say we would never have ads. We'd never sell out. We haven't had ads up to this point.
Capitalism.
I'd like to say that. The problem is that we are 3 relatively successful middle-aged white males in America. And so sort of instinct and culture suggests that we would completely sell out if somebody offered us.
We would like to stop working.
I don't know that anybody's breaking down our door to make ads.
I know. I was just positing hypothetically if they were.
If we got really...
If we right now would be like, we'll never have ads. We'll never sell mattresses and my pillows.
Yeah, you gotta.
I can't say that.
Check yourself.
Yeah, I can't. I don't
Think
want
for the
to.
future.
I don't want to make myself into a future liar. I don't want future
Yeah,
Patrick to
that's
come back in
respectable.
time and be like, look, man, you can't be saying that you're never going to have a My Pillow commercial just because you think the guy's a piece of shit and an asshole.
We should make phony ads.
Because he might give you $10 million.
Remember, Mike had that idea to make phony ads, and then that would attract people.
Oh yeah, no, I think the idea of making phony ads would be fun too. That we could have ads without undermining our ideals. But
we wouldn't make any money off of it.
but
Unless someone wanted to pay us money for him.
yeah,
Nobody would want to pay us.
all right. So how about we
This is
then?
not Europe.
We talked about new Kirk. Now we should talk about old Pike.
Old Pike.
Old Pike.
Old Pike's pretty funny.
Oh, I loved old Pike.
Yeah.
I did too.
Mount as old Pike.
great.
I mean, I couldn't believe it.
He's had
For some reason-
that classic, old school uniform.
The monster maroons from
For-
the
Yeah.
TOS movies,
Yeah.
etc.
There's no reason for this, but for when I was looking at him, I kept thinking Ray Liotta, and I don't know why. Because it just doesn't make.
There were
any
even a
sense,
couple scenes
It's
where
the
old,
hair, man.
yeah, there were a couple scenes where old Pike looked kind of like Shatner in Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3 era, in the weirdly, just for brief moments. I don't think he was trying to do that, but it was the monster maroons,
Crusty old admiral vibe.
and the hair and everything. It's just,
And he made that inappropriate joke at the end, or at least poorly timed joke about
Yes.
because there's 2 of us.
It's
he's
yeah,
still
I get
Pike.
it.
Like this.
I like
This is some
that.
serious shit, man.
I thought
no,
that-
I liked it. I
And
thought
the
it was
other
funny.
Pike was annoyed by it.
I not only liked it just because it was cute and amusing. When I thought about it, I was like, that is a brilliant bit of dialogue to put in there, because not only does it lighten an otherwise relatively dark episode a little bit, but it stresses that Pike, this is a future version of Pike who he hasn't gone through his face melting ordeal, but he is enduring a terrible war that he knows that he caused in his attempt to try to save a couple people's lives, that he has now had millions of people, and especially
Spock.
his close friend Spock, suffer as a result of that decision. You see it on his face. You see the bags under his eyes. You see the weight of the ongoing war just sort of crushing him down. He's slouching a lot. You see all that.
He looked a little greasy.
But despite, okay, all right, okay, but despite all that,
That was just old makeup.
He's still Pike. He's still Pike, and he couldn't help but make a goofy, dumb dad joke.
Yeah.
And that's a great character moment. That's who Pike is. He is resilient in the face of otherwise terrible things. He can make like in the pirate episode. I know that's a more lighthearted episode too, but like the R pirate thing that some people hated.
Yeah, right. It's the same kind of humor where he's just
he's just goofy and fun, even in
it annoys everybody.
dire
so
circumstances.
that our pirate
Yar.
moment that was
Making egg spaghetti.
that was simultaneously funny and uncomfortable for me. At this, like, I
For me,
thought,
it was
like
funny because it was uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
How
It was.
that's how his crew would feel too. So
Yeah. Maybe it was the chicken because of the egg, and not the egg because of the chicken. But you know what I'm saying.
Sort of, yes.
yeah. And number one was just like, you got to stop that right now.
Well, old Pike was because you look at Pike and you're like, they can't make this guy any sexier. they can make his hair taller, but he's as sexy as going to be. And then this is like old, worn down, war torn Pike, and somehow he's like he was like older and sadder, and but in that uniform, that uniform really helps. That uniform can take you quite some distance. But yeah, old Pike was good.
Several movies.
Anson
several
Mount
movies in that uniform.
Yeah, Anson Mount did a great job portraying him, and looked like he had a lot of fun. The editing, of course, people have been doing the double act going back since before the Patty Duke show. So it's nothing new, and they've gotten better at doing it over
There's
time.
that Alec Guinness movie where he plays all those characters.
But in this case, it was seamless. It was just seamless to see these two people interacting with each other. And I think a lot of that credit goes to the editing and production, of course, but I think so much of it has to go to Anson Mount, because that's just got to be a tricky thing to do, to play against yourself and have to play both roles,
Well, isn't that
separated
what
by costume changes in multiple days. And
Well, that's what she basically did in Orphan Black, right? That's basically
Yes. She's amazing. What's her name?
Mindy Palindrome. Mindy Palindrome.
Tatiana Maslany. Not her name isn't Mindy Palindrome. Her name is Tatiana Maslany.
No one's name is Palindrome.
She's going to be the She-Hulk. Orphan Black is
She what?
fantastic. She's going to be
what?
She-Hulk.
I should change my name to
She-Hulk.
Palindrome. That
She-Hulk.
sounds awesome.
She-Hulk.
Mindy Palindrome.
No,
What?
Not Mindy.
Mindy.
What did you say, Jesse?
I should change my last name to Palindrome. And then I'd have
Yeah,
to come up with
why
a
not?
first name. I'd change my name to a first name that's a palindrome.
Onomatopoeia Palindrome. That'll be your
That's
name.
not a palindrome.
Who said it would have to be?
I did.
You can't make.
I said
You can't
it.
turn the word. You can't turn the word palindrome into a palindrome.
No, not the word palindrome. Just a first name that's a palindrome.
Auto palindrome.
Like Bob?
Like Otto Palindrome. Or
Otto or Bob?
Or Bob Palindrome. That's
Yeah.
that along those lines, but perhaps
The problem is
Better.
Bob is short for Robert, and that might confuse people.
right.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
All right. Anything more about old Pike or young Kirk or any of this business?
I think with Pike, we're gonna have these just along the way. He's gonna like figure something out, or he's going to learn some things, or come to terms with what's going to happen to him, or something. And this is just one of those moments where he's sort of growing, and he's like, well, I guess I can't do that.
I'm curious to see if they continue this point with Pike. If they continue the point with Pike,
The Pike point?
If they continue this story, because this could be seen as a season-long arc where Pike is coming to terms with his future.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily need to revisit it all that much moving forward, right? I bet they will in some form or another, but
Like a little bit here and there.
yeah, he kind of has now decided, okay, I can't change the future. I have to accept it. I think what we might learn more now is we know, if we've seen TOS, we know what happens to Pike ultimately, but not truly ultimately, right? They could always add on something that happens to him after the events of
That's true.
the cage and the menagerie, right?
Yeah.
They can always, the menagerie, we know what happens after that. Maybe something yet more happens after that to change Pike's ultimate fate into something a little bit more pleasant than what we last saw, which was still, somewhat pleasant. But I think they could redo the ending to be a little bit more modern, a little bit more interesting.
I like, on a side note, I like how they keep showing his face melting like every once in a while in an episode. It's kind of gross.
It is really gross, yeah. But it's good that they show the trauma, right? That it is important that they show that he's going through pretty serious trauma.
Jesse, did you say you had a point to make?
Well, yeah, it seems that that Pike is going to figure something out or come to terms with stuff. There's also the thing that, like, as far as he knows, he's going to die, but as far as we know, he doesn't die. He's horribly disabled, and he goes to the Telosians. But
yes, and he ends up going to the Telosians, where they give him the illusion,
and Spock helps him get there
because
Spock figures something out at some point along the way. So there might even be some stuff where he and Spock figure out some stuff about his fate.
Yeah,
and that's why Spock knows what to do when it happens. He's like, all right, we're going to.
Here's what we're going to do.
The Forbidden Planet.
When Pike told future Spock, Spock was all like, he's like, is this one of your human jokes?
Smock.
Is this one of your human jokes?
Yeah,
not the Klingon jokes, not a Rigelian tiger. It's
not a Cardassian jape.
But that was the equivalent of going like. That was the equivalent, of course, going like, you're joking, right? Which is like, if you went to the logical conclusion, it would seem inappropriate that Pike would joke at a time like this. So I think Spock could have figured out.
Yeah, but you're talking about logical conclusions. The problem that Spock and Vulcans in general
he's half
always
human.
Well, no. Vulcans in general have with humans is they have difficulty predicting them because they're unpredictable and emotional.
And
Like they're weird.
They don't believe you until you mind meld, and then like, okay, now I believe you. Okay, my mind is your mind.
I don't know. I just think that Spock would have known he was joking. That's all. I mean, wasn't joking. I thought Spock would have known he wasn't.
Well,
joking.
Spock is convincible.
And maybe he was just doing it as a pro forma, sort of a cultural thing.
He's a Starfleet
Humans
officer.
expect you to ask to confirm that you're not joking. When
they ask you to go, are you making
unusual
what Patrick, next time you make a joke, I'm going to go, Patrick, are you making one of those human jokes?
I hope you do, but I hope you do it in mixed company with other people than us, non super nerds. You know, when we're mixing with all our non super nerd friends.
Oh, you afraid that I'll be too scared?
I think you might be too scared.
Oh no,
you might.
That's a challenge.
You might be a fraidy cat.
No, don't say that. No, don't say that.
You might
no,
be. I don't know.
Don't say that. At the end, Kirk goes to Pike. He goes, "Did it ever occur to you that sometimes you can't avoid a fight? If you had just chased that Romulan ship from the get-go and taken it out, maybe none of this would have happened." It's like, way to rub it in, Kirk. You know, I think Pike knew that sometimes, that's the case because it didn't work in that state.
But did the audience know?
Kirk likes to rub it in, man.
That was exposition from the writers or perhaps the producers or the studio saying like, the audience isn't going to get that. We got to state it outright.
Right. Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly
It seemed a little out of character for somebody to make that statement there. It was a little awkward, but okay, fine. That's the kind of exposition that can be a little bit aggravating.
Pike, I got it. You're going to be a great captain one day.
That's right. All right. So I think we're about up on another break. So we will do that. We will take a break, and then
we're gonna do it.
Do the take a break. Do the take a break.
And when we come back,
do the take a break.
When we come back from Smoko,
leave me alone.
I'm on Smoko. That's a song. Look it up. It's a good one.
Yeah.
When we come back from Smoko, we will talk about I'm sure a variety of things, but in particular, what's going to go on with Una? What do we
I knew you were going to say
what
that.
do we think's going to happen with Una?
I knew you were going to say that.
Una Chin Riley. All right.
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay, Dan. We'll be right back.
Teeth, I declare.
Damn it, we're going to break. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. God damn it. Okay, we're back. I think
we're calm.
We're all calmed down a little bit. Relatively speaking, I shall say. Relative. It's a relative time. It's a relative measure. It's a relative metric. Okay. All right.
Okay, what are we going to do next?
Okay. We were going to talk about Una. We find out at the end of this episode that Pike's lover, the captain of the Cayuga, has been tasked.
Don't task me.
Yes. She chose to task him. Pike is always like, "Don't task me," and she's like, "I'm totally going to task you." She's tasked with arresting Una Chin Riley, number one, for the crime of.
She doesn't seem so cool anymore.
Of deceit. Well, I mean, she's following orders. What are you going to do, right? But yeah, so we're muddling this all up real good. In the
Captain Patel? Is it Captain Patel?
Yes, Captain Patel. In The Ghosts of Illyria, we learn that Una Chin Riley is not a human, in fact, but rather an Illyrian.
Right.
A group of people who are in favor of and practice genetic manipulation. I said that very clearly. Fool me once. Genetic manipulation. Their philosophy is that instead of terraforming planets and changing them to accommodate their biological processes,
terraform their minds.
And their bodies, they genetically engineer themselves to be able to live in different places and do different things.
That doesn't sound so bad. That's just
it doesn't sound so bad.
It's a different perspective.
However,
but it can lead. You know where it leads, though. It can lead to people creating armies and a lot of human rights issues on that front too.
Yeah.
You know,
and in Star Trek, largely based off of the 1960s philosophies and understanding of genetic manipulation, which were very primitive at the time, and with a very close memory of both World War II and the Nazis and the eugenics movements that started in America ahead of those by people who misunderstood the On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Unfortunately, a tremendous number of people misunderstood that purposely or otherwise and created unscientific false philosophies of racial and genetic superiority.
Bad stuff happened.
So it's all understandable in that context horror. and within the in-world context in Star Trek, in which the Khan, etc., all the genetically engineered supermen supposedly took over the Earth and caused all these problems. So that's what's happened in the history of the Federation to lead to them not being fans of genetically engineered people. However, strictly speaking, number one, Una is not being arrested for being an Illyrian because
she's doing it for lying.
The Federation is not that fascist, certainly not at this stage. It's because she didn't reveal this information.
You just lied. You just can't lie to the Federation.
And she lied because she knew she would not be accepted into Starfleet if she didn't lie about it. So that's the crime that she has supposedly committed. I mean, it's pretty clear that she did commit that crime.
They'll take an android, but they won't take a genetically modified.
When they were first talking about Una being in jail when he was in future and talking to Lon, and then Spock was talking about it with the Lon, it made it sound a lot more dire, almost like. I mean, this way they did it make sense because it sets up for next season and it gets us something to like bridge to, and that's cool. But at first I was wondering, it's like, well, maybe Una does some like super secret evil shit, and like Pike goes back in time, and now the next season is him trying to like figure out how he's supposed to hang around this Una when he's like, she's gonna do something horrible. What's she gonna do? But but it turns out she didn't do anything horrible. She just, you
make a good point, Dan. It could be that we're not privy to something that happens in the intervening time because La'an, Commander La'an, in this case, I like that cute little scene where Pike calls her a lieutenant.
She's got a gold uniform.
Yeah, she's like, look at my uniform. Commander La'an talks about how nobody can talk to her. So this isn't the Tom Paris, New Zealand kind of hanging out kind of prison, I guess.
No,
she's really being kept aside. Now it could purely be
put
because
her out in the asteroid belt or something.
Maybe because she's genetically engineered, that plays into it. Maybe she does have a few little superpowery type things.
I guess originally I didn't
put her in
think
super jail.
I didn't think originally that I was wondering maybe they're not going to reveal why she went to jail this season, but they ended up doing it. And so I was just thinking maybe when I first saw it, I was like, I wonder if they're going to keep this as an ongoing thing.
I got you. So in the scene where I got you.
Pike, where Pike doesn't know, and so as the
Spock
audience
says that was like 7 years ago, and then it was like 7 years.
Yeah, well, I was saying as the audience, you would like live along with Pike as the audience, wondering what did Una do,
totally.
And have like a whole season of that. They didn't go in that direction. Yeah. Instead, they settled it right away, which is fine because it does its own thing. But that's originally what I thought. I thought Una actually did something bad, and like we were gonna have to sit there wondering
she's
what
like
bad she did for all
the
season.
Death of Fun or something.
Oh yeah, she killed. That's what it was. Killing fun. But they went a different direction where it's like she's obviously did a crime that's as an audience member is very forgivable because in fact we feel sympathy towards her.
Yeah.
As opposed to if she really did some sellout shit where we would be like, Una just
again with the caveat, at least as far as we know now, and I'm presuming
I don't think she did that shit either. Does
I mean she wouldn't.
I'm presuming.
I know.
I'm presuming that no matter what, we're going to be on Una's side, and the expectation that many have on the capital I internet. And it's an expectation that I share is that
what about the lowercase internet?
This is setting us up for the obligatory courtroom episode of Star Trek.
That's
right?
So Star Trek.
This is a tradition in Star Trek to varying degrees, depending on the series that you're talking about.
Especially TOS.
TNG did it the most, right? So I went ahead and made a list. I made a list here. So in TOS, and of course you could quibble about how much some of these count as courtroom episodes.
I want to clarify something with Jesse real quick. You were saying that Una wouldn't have. What are you doing? You were saying what you were saying, Jesse, is that it would be impossible for Una to be like keep secret some super traitor sellout shit because you were like, that's not within her character. She wouldn't ever do.
No, I was just saying that she's not a bad person.
Yeah, that's what I said. You said just now. Like, that's why I was saying she didn't do it. You were saying she wouldn't do it because it's not within her character.
It sounds to me like you are both saying
we're agreeing.
a very similar
I'm
point,
sorry.
with the nuance being that Jesse believed that she wouldn't do it, and Dan believing that she couldn't do it. And while I really do respect, yes, you did. You say,
wait a second, no, that's not what I meant.
No.
I was saying what Jesse. I was trying to figure out what Jesse said. I was trying to understand what Jesse said.
I respect the semantic difference between wouldn't and couldn't.
I didn't think either of those things. Maybe I do now. Maybe you convinced me.
Maybe you convinced yourself. Doctor, heal thyself, as they say in some corners.
Okay, well,
of the medical profession.
That was a total confusing mess.
Too much.
This podcast has been traditionally a confusing mess. That's part of our charm, I think. I think that's probably one of the selling points, right? That's why it's good to do chores. Do chores while you're listening to us. We'll lighten up your chores. We're basically the Mary Poppins of the Star Trek podcast.
But I bet you that Una doesn't stay in prison
spoonful of
for
Rectogino.
7 years in this timeline.
Instant
can they change the timeline? Are we still? We're still going back
Jenks.
to can they change the timeline or not?
Yeah,
they went back.
They're telling us they can.
They went back to the shit. Yeah,
they went back to fix it, and they're telling us that they can change the timeline, right? Okay, but the Una stuff.
You were talking about the courtroom scene.
Courtroom stuff, and here's some of the famous courtroom episodes. I'm sure I've missed some, and I'm sure some people will quibble whether or not some of these count. But in TOS, I think the key ones are you have Wolf in the Fold, which is where it's pseudo courtroom. It's like an administrator's office, basically. But that's the one where Scotty is accused of stabbing a woman to death.
Right.
Just stabbing her to death. And that's the
no, not you, Scotty.
And that's the episode where Spock. We always talk about the Star Trek being progressive, but progressive relative to its time. In Wolf in the Fold, there's a line, I can't remember it exactly where, but Spock is basically like, the human woman gets way more scared than the human man. They can't help it. It's instinctual. It's like awful to have it coming out of Spock, this revered character, and he's saying this horrible incel shit, basically.
He's trying to logic. He's trying to use logic to have some incel logic.
Yeah, there's some bad stuff in the old Star Trek.
Oh yeah, and that's one of those examples, as well as in the Cage when Pike is talking about, like, well, we'll never have a woman on my bridge.
Yeah,
Starfleet doesn't allow women to be captains.
They're just bringing coffee.
Then there's the Menagerie, of course. That's probably one of the key ones people think of in TOS. That's sort of a courtroom style episode. Court Martial is a good TOS episode with Kirk is being accused of basically incompetence or sort of negligence, I guess is the better term.
I don't believe it.
Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country has a famous Klingon courtroom scene, which is great.
With Worf's ancestor.
In TNG, you've got the Devil's Due. You've got
the drum beaters,
the drumhead, Encounter at Farpoint. That's all about Q holding them in court. A Matter of Perspective, where Riker is accused of sleeping with and killing
that one, man,
killing a scientist and sleeping with his wife
crazy.
or whatever. First Duty, which is where Wesley and his flying pals do some fucked up shit. But for me,
a lot of TNG ones,
and the Measure of a Man. That's the one we referenced earlier where Picard argues in favor of Data's sentience, basically, that he is an individual that deserves all the rights.
I didn't mention that earlier.
No, but Jesse did.
I always think people talking about me.
Yeah, he didn't name it maybe by Measure of Man, but that's the Measure of Man. I'm guessing that's probably where they go with Una. It's probably like a Measure of a Man type thing where it's like, the right of somebody to be who they are and still participate. Like, can Starfleet really ban a race of people based off of their own personal philosophy?
Is there any court stuff in Voyager?
Yeah, well, Voyager. So the next up is actually Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine has kind of three key ones. Tribunal, which is like let's fuck around with O'Brien episode. Dax. Where Dax goes on trial for a crime committed by one of her previous hosts.
Oh, snap.
That's a cool episode. And Rules of Engagement is a fantastic Deep Space Nine. That's like another Klingon. That's got a Klingon lawyer, but it takes place on the station.
Klingon
lawyer. So Worf is on trial. It's similar to Court Martial with Captain Kirk, where Worf is put on trial by the Klingon lawyer. So that's pretty cool.
Right on.
Voyager, there's a few that might count. I think Death Wish is the closest. That's where a Q shows up and wants to claim asylum because he wants to commit suicide. And then our familiar Q shows up to argue against it and be like, he's not allowed to kill himself. It'll ruin the continuum if he's allowed to kill himself.
I think I saw that.
Yeah. Enterprise had one it was called Judgment, which is another Klingon court episode. Archer gets himself involved with the Klingons. So it is a long-held tradition in Star Trek to have
Klingon lawyers.
Courtroom episodes. It's also a long tradition in the Law and Order franchise.
I bet.
Yeah, it's a little bit a part of it. Only a little bit, though. Only a little bit.
It's a well they go back to quite frequently.
It's the Law and Order is very, very
it's
structured.
Mostly about humans.
It's like this. It's like the same thing every episode, basically.
Did you say Law and Order? Like Law and Order? Is that like a web series where she just reviews products she's ordered online?
She just kicks ass.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
She's
that's
ordered
weird.
from the Ferengi.
I didn't think anyone was going to know what I was talking
exchange.
about. That's precisely what I said.
But they don't
down
have
to the word.
But they don't have the internet in. They don't have the internet in Star Trek because it's one of the things that Star Trek didn't invent.
That's part of one of the things I was saying.
They have to log into some.
You
channel.
were about to say that.
Some data channel.
That's what I was saying in Picard when Raffi was talking about how in the past, in the 2020 year 2024, all systems are linked. That's because of the internet.
Oh no, I forgot about this whole fucking nonsense. Jesus Christ.
In the future, there's no internet, so they're not all linked because they have separate pads for each thing. They're not.
Do you think Raffi's full name is Giraffe?
Yeah. So new listeners may be confused by Dan's statement. Long-term listeners will enjoy the opportunity to be aggravated yet again by this little rant that
Giraffe.
Which I'm completely right about. I don't know why you're saying
Dan occasionally brings up. But notably Discovery and Picard, they don't really
totally
get any,
right about it.
They don't really have any. They don't have any.
You're the weird one, Patrick, not me.
They don't have any courtroom stuff. Discovery has, Michael Burnham sitting in front of a Starfleet tribunal or something for her thing, but it's a very minor part. There's no episodes that are really focused on that.
They don't really. They sort of forgive her all of a sudden in that anyway.
Well, this may just be wishful thinking on my part and the part of many others on the internet, but it really does seem to me that you resolve the Una thing. There's a few different ways you can resolve it or a few different steps to going to resolving it, but that ultimately it's got to come down to some grand argument, some speech by Pike where he relies on empathy and emotion to declare why.
Do you think
why it's fucked up to put her in jail for the crime of wanting to be an exemplary Starfleet officer?
Do you think that they're going to resolve that and at least make at most the first 2 episodes of next season and then they move on?
I'm curious. That's a good question, Dan, because we've got a couple things floating around out there. One of them is La'an going on an adventure to help Oriana, the child who was orphaned by the Gorn. And learning more Gorn lore along the way.
Gorn
lore.
And we've got number 1 arrested and in that way incapacitated in some fashion. We have Uhura finishing her cadetship, but still being on the Enterprise. I know the implication was that she want to stick around, but in theory, doesn't she got to go back to finish her last year at the Academy or whatever?
Maybe not.
Is she going to get a Wesley style field commission? Has that already happened?
I think she's smarter
something
than
we'll find out next week? Maybe they in the series premiere they're at Earth and Uhura is visiting her grandma and Pike is in San Francisco where the prison is or something. The Starfleet prison's under the Golden Gate Bridge. Whatever. I don't know. They could go a lot of different directions, but they've got some open threads. They've done it a little Deep Space Nine style where, there's a few little open threads. It's not like a hardcore cliffhanger, right? They did not make the mistake, which I was concerned about. I was curious what they were going to do with the season finale because they have already with Strange New Worlds. Fucking A.
They mixed up another title of something else.
They have already.
It was him, not you.
They have already eschewed the traditional 2-part or multi-part series premiere, right? Because TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, Picard is Discovery and Picard are complicated because they're also serialized, but Discovery had like a three episode opener basically. But in Strange New Worlds, they gave us a 1 episode opener, and instead of getting a to be continued season 1 cliffhanger, which they could have done, a la Best of Both Worlds, or whatever you want to do in terms of.
I am the cutest of Borg.
Most of the old Star Trek had there was a 2-parter from like one season to the
exactly.
next.
That was very common, certainly after the first,
especially TNG and Deep Space Nine.
And it worked. It got people. You got to wait over the whole summer. I can't wait till I get back to see how they resolve this story.
What if one of the season?
Often the second part was not as good as the first.
What if one of the cliffhangers for Deep Space Nine, one of the seasons was like Jake and Nog got in a fight, and then Nog left, and Jake was like, I don't know if me and Nog are ever going to be friends again. And that was like the season ender.
That would be so fucked up.
It's like, who else is going to be friends with fucking Nog?
It would be so depressing. But the point is that they did not go that route. They went a different route for the series premiere. For the season finale, they didn't do the full-on stretch a story out, because they could have stretched the story out, and then it would have been one of those cases where the resolution's not as interesting as the setup, and we had to wait a long time for it, and it's sort of needlessly frustrating. In this way, they gave us a closed story, an episodic story, sort of a revisiting of Balance of Terror, playing around with the idea of Kirk and Spock and all the fate and all these other things. And that's it. But with this little hint of a fun, maybe the wrong word, cliffhanger in the Una thing, right? We don't know. And then we already have the La'an thing from last week. So we're excited to see what happens next season, but we're satisfied with how things ended.
It's almost like an episode. It's almost like that Deep Space Nine episode where they go into the Tribbles episode. Like it's almost like you're going into another episode.
That's a good call.
That happened.
Yeah.
It's,
More
it's
trouble.
Similar to that.
That was Trials and Tribulations. Yeah. More Troubles and More Tribbles is the animated series.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with the neutral zone?
Don't go there.
Yeah. It's like
that's the thing. Why is it called a neutral zone? Because
it should be called like the Forbidden Zone.
Right. Why even have it? Why not just have the border?
And the Romulans are always in the neutral zone. So
they're
always in there.
Right. So the Federation, Starfleet or the Federation or whatever, they're like, if you go into the neutral zone, that's an act of war.
Right.
Well, why even have the neutral zone?
Exactly.
Then why not just have a hard border between Romulans?
I believe if I were,
that's all it was anyway.
Because I thought neutral zone meant you could both go in.
Those bitches were all over the neutral zone. Like every time you found them, they were in the neutral zone.
I will posit. I will utilize a contemporary example.
Contemporary. I'd like the rotisserie French fries, please.
Cherry.
There are Russian jets frequently flying into the space, the airspace of nearby countries that don't want them to fly over there. The Chinese jets are doing the same thing. It's quite possible.
Belarus,
U.S., British, maybe they do that sometimes too. But the point being is that there are times when the person is technically violating something, but that doesn't mean you're going to start a massive war over it. And that's part of the difficulty, is deciding what is the actual threshold, right? You have the written down threshold, and then people start poking at it. And then you have to decide, okay, how much can they poke at it before now I have to actually shoot back at them? Or now I have to actually declare war on them and consign millions of people on both sides to die? Is one spaceship flying in the wrong space like good enough reason to do that? And then different people are going to have different opinions on where that threshold lies. And so that's what some of the argument that's going on here is that Starfleet has a policy that's like, no, just let them fuck around a little bit. It's got to get real serious before we actually are into war territory.
It's more like the change in goalpost zone. Change the goalpost zone. Or like the blurry, unclear line zone, or the misunderstood intention zone, or something.
It's like the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, which I visited.
Nonsense.
It's an interesting place. It's a big fence on one side, and then there's like half a mile of crazy craziness in the middle, and then
Some like mines and barbed wire.
yeah, there's just a
and
bunch of nothing, and then there's a big fence on the other side, and then the North Koreans had a
Fair enough.
fake little city, with people walking around in it.
Fair enough.
Fake little city with little people.
Fake little city with little people down.
Little malnourished people.
Fake little city with people down.
Starving to death people.
Fake little city with
All right, I think
I'm trying to think if there's any more points I'd like to say.
Well, I had a couple. We can do our odds and ends.
I got a couple odds and ends.
Kirk was on the USS Farragut.
Yeah, which
Farragut was a big naval hero in U.S. history before World War II.
And in the
He was in the Civil War.
in the canon, I think it's already understood that Kirk's previous assignment was on the Farragut.
Yeah, okay.
Prior to getting the Enterprise. I think it may be ambiguous as to whether or not he was a captain or not. I can't quite recall. I think he was. I can't remember if it was just like a field promotion to captain or if it was an actual. Anyway, I'm sure people will write
So
in.
at some point, does he
let
just
us
get
know.
assigned to the Enterprise and then eventually?
Yes, I just don't think. I think sometimes people assume that the Enterprise was Kirk's first command, but I don't think that's the case. I think Kirk had a prior command. I think it was the Farragut, at least the Farragut being one of them, and he was just a
Farragut West.
he was a go getter. So he
like the
eventually got the Enterprise.
Farragut North.
I was going to note that I thought that this may be the best thus far updating of TOS style visuals and production design in terms of sticking very, very closely to what was on TOS while also making it obviously beautiful 4K modern looking stuff.
Yeah.
The Romulan uniforms, more than anything, they are in some senses identical to what's in TOS in terms of the style and shape, but they actually look awesome instead of looking like really silly. Like they look like they're wearing like some wool knit silly nonsense in TOS.
Yeah.
They've
Kinda
taken
like Roman.
they've taken the shape and colors and made it into some sinister martial craziness, which was cool.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
When Pike was making that food, he goes, just add eggs, Parmesan, lightly saute, and it transforms from leftovers
He made
into
egg
something
spaghetti.
new. And then Patel goes, little like what we're doing to these outposts. And Pike goes, not as tasty though. Do you think he meant that like what they're doing to the outpost is
meant the
more tasty than the
outposts.
spaghetti,
Yes.
or
Yes.
is it less
Yes.
tasty?
I think he meant the other thing. I think he meant that the egg, the food he's making is tastier than helping the outpost.
So Jesse says the opposite.
No.
I
But
say the
but the way he said it, I think what he meant was that eating food is better. The way he said it, the way his line was written, it means the opposite.
Right.
And it drove me
Right.
nuts.
Yeah, I
It
could. I
drove
was
me
actually
completely
yeah,
fucking nuts.
It's yeah.
He's saying
Madman.
saying that helping the outpost is tastier than the food they're eating, which is philosophically awesome to think, but it's just not true.
It just doesn't
just
really
not
make
true.
any sense.
Yeah, because it doesn't
it's-
make any
it's
sense. It's a non sequitur.
Right.
I didn't think anybody would care about it.
It's
I thought
an
you guys.
overly
I thought you
poetic
guys would all be
statement.
like, Dan, what are you talking about?
No,
No, I thought about that too.
no. I thought about it too. In
glad.
fact, I'd put it out of my
I think
memory.
I think it probably it was more maddening to you than it was to me, but it was
drove me
something that
fucking
stuck
nuts.
out.
I was like, "What's this?"
Um,
I paused it and rewound it like 1,000 times. I was like, "What are you-
Yeah, it was.
What are you doing here,
Why did
Captain
you say
Pike?"
it?
I think you're basically right, Patrick. Is how you explained it.
Yeah.
I thought it was an LOL moment.
Did you lol? Did you
When,
lol? You lolled? You
when-
lolled?
When Pike was saved by the red alert during the marriage, it was like he was all relieved that everyone was about to die. And he didn't have to like that marriage.
Yeah, that was funny. And having watched Balance of Terror, that opens with the marriage, right? And the red alert also interrupts the vows. The only difference is Kirk isn't fumbling his way through because he hasn't been quantum leaped into his own body.
That's a
in the
big
future.
flaw of quantum leaping in any sense, is that you never get to like learn the context surrounding what you're jumping into. Like no memories. You just you don't know what's going on. It's like you in another body and you have no idea what's going on.
In modern quantum leap, I know they're remaking the show.
Pike didn't know didn't have the memories of future Pike that he was inhabiting.
But yes, and there are all sorts of clear plot breaking problems if you take them into consideration. But what I was wondering is if they do a modern Quantum Leap, is the whole gag going to be, instead of having the little digital computer friend or whatever,
Ziggy,
that you'll leap into the person's body, and then you just go to the internet and you look up their Facebook and their Twitter feed, and you're like, oh, this person's
That's
a
what
fucking,
this is. Okay.
they appear to be a neo-Nazi. I guess my job is to make them not a neo-Nazi.
Then you look in the mirror.
You're just looking at their Twitter feed and their
it wouldn't be as exciting.
TikToks and whatnot. I don't know.
It would just be all about browsing the
It'll
internet.
be called Quantum Sleep.
Okay. What was the was there anything else to that point, or are we ready for another
No,
odd
not to
end
that
end?
point.
Another odd end.
ready for another odd end.
In addition to the Romulan music, there was a lot of really cinematic, like movie style music, which they've used periodically throughout the season, but it really hit hard in this one. A lot of deep horns, and a lot of tinkly dinklies, where it's all like tinkly dinkly.
There was a fair amount of tinkly dinks.
A little bit of Star Trek V, Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah.
Deep, emotional horns, military horns.
Now, this isn't a music hit, but this is a sound effect. I swear, when the Romulan plasma ball hits the Enterprise, that reddish
Plasma ball.
Plasma ball. Please, Eddie.
Did I stutter?
yes, you did.
Did I stutter, motherfucker?
No.
I don't know if that's a stutter,
frequently.
but it was a
It was an amusing accidental alliteration.
When the plasma
that was a purposeful
plasma ball.
when the Romulan plasma ball, that plasma ball flies through plasma ball.
Yes,
plasma. Is that what you were laughing at? Did I say plasma ball, or did I say plasma ball? Plasma ball.
Yes.
Did I say plasma ball?
The latter. The latter is what has got us giggling.
Okay, so when they shot the Romulan plasma ball and it hit the Enterprise, I swear one of the sound effects they mixed in was the sound of a wildcat. It sounded like that. Yeah, that. Exactly. I can't do that sound.
I can't do it either. I can do a normal cat.
That was pretty good though. That was like that's a cat. No, I understand. That was good though, Patrick. If you listen to when that plasma ball hits them, it makes the sound. There's many sounds layered over top of each other, as does happen with these sound effects. There's many sounds. Like I think the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, they took part of a train, like going
like a pig,
and like going down the road, and they took a lion, and they took a this and
like
that.
A pig and a lion. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this one, I think part of the sound effect they used for the Romulan plasma ball was wildcat.
I'm going to go back and listen to that. Okay. I'm going to listen to the episode just for that. But the plasma ball, when I was talking about the production, when I was talking about the production design,
not the plasma ball,
the Romulan plasma ball was exactly one of the things I was talking about. Because they did a good job. They did a good job.
Yeah. That was a long walk.
It was a long walk to a rather uninteresting destination.
A short pier.
Sam Kirk says that Jim doesn't like to lose. Yeah, we knew about that. Kirk said that himself in like Star Trek 2 or something.
He likes the Enterprise.
Scotty, there was a brief Easter egg
Scotty's voice
cameo of Scotty's voice. In an interview, one of the producers were saying they quote weren't ready yet to cast somebody as Scotty.
It was super silly, Scotty. He sounded super silly.
He gave like a Bone style line though, because didn't he go like I'm a something, not a something.
Yeah,
it was a little Bone style. It was a double.
That was like
It was a double nested Easter egg
because there was no bones.
No pun intended.
Still no
bones. No bones.
When old Pike is looking at a picture of even younger Pike with Robert April, that like it was on his mantle or something.
Bob.
He's looking at the picture and super young Pike and Robert April are wearing like the Cage style floppy sweatshirt uniforms, like the really weird off like brown yellow over, like it's too big and just
Right.
floppy.
Kind of gym uniform.
Yeah, like they're just out exercising.
Jumpsuit.
Odds and ends.
Odds and
When
ends.
what was the name of the father of Mott who got zapoid?
Hansen, he was like
Hansen?
Hansen. That was
He-
his
yeah,
first,
he
that
goes-
was his
he
first
goes-
name.
Is that the same dude?
Yeah.
He goes
Okay.
in that scene where he's gonna die. He goes, Enterprise, can you see? A
Yes.
command post here. We're a
That's-
mile deep on an asteroid.
Yep.
Almost solid iron. And even though our deflectors, it did
Yeah,
this.
that was in both episodes.
Then he goes, can you see?
Yes.
And then when the ship all appears, he's like, Enterprise, can you see?
Yes.
In the center of my screen. I was like, he kept saying that. And it was
Those
kinda-
all the weird
kinda
line
awesome.
readings. Yeah, all the weird line readings in this
So
episode
weird.
are because those are directly lifted from
Yeah,
Balance
yeah.
of Terror. So
Ah.
they are doing the exact same scene over again. So it's like 1960s
Okay.
crazy dialogue squished
Can you
into.
see that?
And is
Yeah,
that's
see?
the same
Yeah.
ship that they steal in Lower Decks?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that complicated episode of Lower Decks where they go to like some kind of Vulcan museum, Air and Space Museum, and they steal that bird of prey.
That must be a different one, Bill, because they blow up in both episodes. Like the bird of prey is destroyed, so it must
yeah,
be
that's
some
true.
other one that they captured along the way.
The ship in the middle of the screen.
I think there's another TOS episode.
That's true.
You see the ship in the middle of the screen.
There's another episode of TOS where they might actually get a hold of one, because I know they get a hold of a cloaking device at one point.
Right
any-
on.
So
Any other odds and ends? Dan,
when-
Jesse.
when the
Sir
ship
Nays a
appear-
lot.
when the Romulan ship appears behind them after they think they
Romulan.
after they think they Rochambeaued him, the Romulan ship appears behind them.
Dan,
And then
you're
so-
shrinking. You're sinking down into the screen. I can't see it.
That is irrelevant. To
I can't
just
see it.
people. That's irrelevant to people listening.
I know. It's on podcast.
So after that appears, they shoot the I forget one of the gunners. She shoots
poking
the ship.
his finger at me.
She shoots at the ship, and then Pike goes, "Nice shooting." Like, what does nice shooting mean when you're on a starship? How do you do anything but just press?
You got to
aim
do
and
math. You
shoot?
got to do a bunch of math. If it's
It means fuck you.
if being on an actual Starfleet ship is anything like playing one of those text-based multi-user
You got to push a bunch of
dungeon
buttons.
multi-user dungeon games
Yeah,
back in the
right.
old BBS and Telnet days, then there's a tremendous amount of math. Just a lot of calculating math, which
in
is
the-
why those games weren't as fun as they were advertised.
In the TOS scene, they have to push a bunch of buttons to fire the phasers,
And they have to
'cause
do it
there's
from the
something
phaser
going on.
control room,
From
too.
the phaser control room, and Spock has to come in and do a bunch of stuff.
Well, because
And then he pushes the button. that shoots the
in TOS, they're still using the model that the bridge pushes a button that then sends a command to the fire room, and then somebody in the fire room pushes the button to actually fire the weapon. Whereas
So-
that's silly in the context of normal stuff, which with computers you just push the button and you can do everything from your
So
laptop.
do you think if you had a good gunner that was pretty good but not quite as good, they would have missed that shot?
They might have.
Maybe they weren't as good as at math.
Yeah, it must have been.
Speaking of math, I did think this was
Or they just didn't use the computer.
This was kind of like a metaphorical version of the three-body problem, and the three-body problem in
Is that like the three eyes, bro?
well, the three-body problem. It is also a really good sci-fi book, but in math or in physics or whatever, it's the whole thing is like when you're working out the gravitational impact of two bodies on each other, that's pretty straightforward math. But then when you add a third body, it makes the calculations all unpredictable and complicated. So you basically can't extrapolate out beyond a certain point what the position and velocity and everything of those three bodies is going to be.
Three bodies gonna be.
It's one of those clever little math problems. And in Balance of Terror, Balance of Terror is Kirk one-on-one with the Romulan commander.
Romulan is with the Romulan.
Romulan.
The Romulan commands.
Yes, with the Romulan commander.
Cobra
And-
Commander.
And so that's kind of classic, right? They can figure each other out, predict each other, and they have this whole submarine battle, essentially.
Yeah.
You predict me.
It's like submarines.
In this episode, in A Quality of Mercy, we have Kirk, Pike, and the Romulan commander. So it's the three body, like it's three different inputs into this system of equations, even though Kirk and Pike are nominally on the same side, and they are working together. They are also coming at it from different philosophical and practical perspectives. So that just adds yet another little thing into that. So that was my final odd and end for this week's episode.
There's a trend. There's a thing that happens throughout all of everything, in TV shows and such.
Oh, okay.
Where they
I
try.
thought you meant like you're just in life in general.
Where they try to, yes, that too. It applies to all facets. It's when they try to cram a little too much dialogue into a part where the character's rushing out the door.
Yeah.
So Pike had kind of a moment like this where he goes, Pike to transporter, get the pads warmed up, chief, and he's like running out the door. And he goes like, he's like, get the pads warmed up, chief. We're about to test our limits.
Yeah.
And then I remember that I think there was a Voyager that happened a few times too, where Janeway was like making some clever quip on the way out the door.
Yeah, she was on her
And
way to get coffee.
But she's like, they're in such a hurry that it doesn't make sense to make this quip. It's like, why
It's
would you
because
be like,
they're drinking too much coffee. It's because drinking too much coffee.
It's because the West Wing came out.
Because
so everyone was like, you gotta have people like wandering around.
Pike was drinking coffee, and he offered coffee to Spock, and Spock was like, "I don't drink coffee, but I drink tea."
He's like, "You want some tea?"
He's like, "No, thanks."
Yeah, he gave him some dagger eyes after that one. He looked like he was about to fucking. It looked like there was a moment where he flashed like this anger and like he wanted to punch him, but then he was like, "Oh, Spock."
He was like,
crazy.
"Spock, I am in no mood to be trolled."
I like that look that he gave Kirk when Kirk was like, this isn't gonna work, and then like they got a response back from the Romulans, and like Pike gave him this look where he was like looking down, and his neck was all puffed.
Yeah, he does that. Yeah, I also like when I forget the exact context of the scene, but Kirk was saying something, and Pike was all like, "Yeah, you just beamed onto my ship after your ship got blown up."
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was like, your ship got exploded.
Shut the fuck up. So
but
all of that was very interesting.
That's gotta hurt Pike's ego, knowing that like tons of people die because of his shitty decision making,
which is why.
And so now he has to live. Not only does he have to live with the fact that he's going to get fucked up, he's also like, man, he must question him. One might question themselves as a captain.
Yeah.
If even if that hasn't happened, they know in the future, if it were up to them, they would have ruined everything.
Which is why the writers gave the Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction "Don't let pride fuck with." That's pride fucking with you speech on the Romulan ship to that aggressively annoying underling of his.
The pride of the praetor.
The pride gets in the way. And so that's perhaps not that Pike comes off as a particularly prideful person, but I think in fact the lesson is even stronger when it's not a particularly prideful person who still needs to learn the lesson that's not something you can worry about. Even if you don't, you got to make sure you're not worrying about it, because you might fool yourself into thinking I'm not worried about it, but you're a human being, so you might be worrying about it without even realizing that you're worrying about it. All right, I think that concludes things for us this week.
A big platinum ball of a podcast.
So next week, we don't know when the next new Star Trek starts up. I'm guessing it'll be Lower Deck season 3 sometime in August. That's my guess.
That's the end of that shit. Yeah.
I think that'll probably be the thing. So
and then Discovery.
In the intervening time, we will be discussing other classic episodes of Star Trek and some topics and things like that. So that's something to look forward to over the next few weeks.
I did enjoy this episode. I thought I did enjoy it.
Dan enjoyed the episode, particularly.
Are you coming back next week, Dan?
He enjoyed the Romulan plasma blob.
Plasma blob.
The Romulan plasma
ball.
I certainly enjoyed hearing about
with
the
luck, Dan
ball.
will be back in studio next week, so we can see his entire head instead of just from his sort
just
of the bridge of his
glasses and
nose
the mustache
upwards, and his cat walking around behind him. But yeah, so next week we will be discussing TOS's Balance of Terror, season 1, episode 14. Highly recommend checking that episode out after you've watched the Strange New World season finale. You might want to go back and watch A Quality of Mercy again to see kind of enjoy some of the multi-layered stuff, of which on this episode of the It's Got Star Trek podcast, I think we accomplished discussing some of it, but you definitely will get more if you watch the episode yourself. And then guess what? We'll come
listen
back
to a different podcast,
and we'll discuss Balance of Terror next week. I think that'll be fun. What do you think, Dan? You think that's going to be fun?
Dan,
That sounds super
what
fun.
do you think, Dan? What do you
I
think?
think it's great.
All
I think
right.
it's fantastic.
What do you
Excellent.
think?
I
Dan?
really think this is a great idea.
Okay,
guys.
good. So, in the meantime, until that
Are
time,
you psyched?
you can reach
I'm
us
ready.
at
All right.
feedback at itsgotstartrek.com. You can get us at www.itsgotstartrek.com.
Blah, 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 blah.
.com. No, just www. Yeah, no, www.
What just happened there?
I got confused.
Get your brain together, man. You're talking like a crazy person.
We're all over social media, of course. Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, etc. at It's Got Star Trek. And one thing on Twitter earlier today, I put up a poll just asking people what they thought of the first season of Strange New Worlds.
But don't tell them who said it, or else your dreams won't come true.
And these were the options that regarding the entire first season of Strange New Worlds, that it was the first best first season, which 57.8% of people agreed.
Interesting.
That it was the second best first season, which 24.4% people agreed with.
Too many numbers.
That it was the third best first season, which 2.2 people, which I think is just a few people there, given the total number of votes.
Third best. That's rather fussy.
And then the fourth option
Rather
was
fussy.
Fourth option was this is a silly metric, which 15.6% of people agreed with that. I don't know. This is a really strong first season, right?
It is.
There was a
yeah.
few ups and downs, of course. I might put it second. I think that Lower Decks had a
They did have a
really
good
strong
one, yeah.
first season. I know we've had some of our friends on Twitter have agreed with that and suggested Lower Decks is better, but it's you could argue it for almost every series of Star Trek.
Remember to include Prodigy in the mix.
Yes, of course. TOS has a ton of just classic episodes occur in that first season, and
one, yeah.
Prodigy is a good point. Except the first season technically isn't over, right? They've aired the first half of the first season, so
snap.
we've still got to look.
Oh, I
but,
didn't know that.
But the first season of Prodigy is really great. I think it's a little bit of a rocky start, enjoyable, but a little like
It finds its feet.
yeah, the
It does.
first couple again.
Wait.
It's got a 2-part opener, right?
Beats
And
two bits.
and once you sort of get into the episodic, the more episodic storytelling where they're kind of advancing their mission, I really fell in love with that show.
Yeah, once they started getting going. Do you think that? So you're saying that this is the second best, even better than the first season of TOS? Is that what you're saying?
I think I might. So like, I understand. I could maybe put it down to third and pop TOS up there with Lower Decks. Lower Decks for me just came out just really strong. Again, there was some unevenness, but just boom, boom, boom.
But it's pretty consistent.
Really enjoyed the consistency. I think this is a super consistent season. TOS, I would argue, is a little bit less consistent. Season 1 of TOS is amazing and does contain some of the biggest classics of the entire series. But it's got some episodes along the way that are less interesting or more problematic. They've grown more problematic over time. But who knows? Maybe we can discuss this in more detail on a bonus episode or on a bank,
Yeah, 'cause a
bank
lot
show
of
sometime. I think there's probably a lot to discuss here.
Bonus bank show, baby.
But that's the kind of thing you can find on Twitter. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
It's got a super
It's Got
clever
Star Trek.
podcast.
You can sign up on Apple Podcasts and
Blah 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 blah.
Spotify and Stitcher
Blah 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 blah
and all that stuff. So
blah 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 blah.
do all that. Recommend us to your friends because why not? Why not do
What
it?
else are you gonna do?
You got nothing better to do. Or recommend us to your enemies. If
You don't do
if
shit
if
with
don't
your
like
time.
if you
Eat
don't like the
some food,
podcast, tell somebody who you don't like, and then they'll have to also not enjoy it.
You don't do shit with
Maybe
your free
ironically they'll enjoy
time.
it. All right,
Your
well,
shit's a waste of time.
Look at the corner.
Your
Next-
shit's a waste of time.
Next week, Balance of Terror.
Balance.
Until then,
Have a ball.
have a good week. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Romulan plasma ball.
Bye bye.
You sneaky son of a bitch.